From Balatro to Hades Mobile, Warbits, and many more, 2024 might have been the best year for mobile gaming so far. So today, I'm ranking the 48 most interesting games of 2024 into one huge mobile games of 2024 tier list, including everything from AAA releases to the hidden indie gems nobody ever hears about. These are the games I played this year, by the way, but let me know your own favorites in the comments and check out my games discovery platform MiniReview.io for thousands of actual great mobile games without pay to win. And then let's kick it off in no particular order with Waven, which is a great turn-based tactical RPG MMO made by the team behind the old Dofus Touch game. I really like the solo and co-op PvE content in this game, and there is a lot to explore, including completely fair PvP matches. So yeah, this is an easy A tier game. Halls of Torment also released this year, and this is a fantastic bullet heaven roguelike game with a retro Diablo-inspired art style and lots of unique bosses. The core gameplay is a lot like Vampire Survivors and Brotato in that you attempt to stay alive and gradually upgrade your character with random abilities while thousands of creatures rush at you. But the game then also has meta progression through 500 quests and permanent upgrades. If you like this reverse bullet hell genre as much as I do, this is an easy S tier game. Another game that looked really cool was Devil May Cry Peak of Combat, which is a 3D action-adventure RPG with super fast-paced combat and even online co-op. The combat is actually pretty good, but the co-op is a bit so-so, and the PvP is clearly pay to win. So while the art style is very polished, heavy grinding and bad monetization ultimately ruined what could have been a great game, so I'll place this in this C tier row. The next game is Auto Pirates, and if you love auto battlers like Super Auto Pets, you might really love this one. The gameplay of gradually expanding your pirate crew in between the automatic fights is great fun, and there's a decent level of strategy despite all the randomness. There's also no pay to win, but I ultimately just didn't feel like continue playing the game, so personally I'll have to place it in the B tier row. We also finally got Warzone this year, which is the mobile version of the popular Battle Royale game set in the Call of Duty franchise. The gameplay is great overall, the controls are solid, and the fast-paced matches with up to 120 players take 10 to 20 minutes, which is just perfect for mobile. But you need a very powerful phone to play this game on, and even then the graphics aren't amazing, so I'm gonna place it here in the A tier row. And listen, I love a good action platformer, but Metal Slug Awakening was honestly just a disappointment. I really wanted this to be a great classic Metal Slug experience, but despite the many game modes, the online co-op and the PvP, the energy system and pay-to-win gacha just destroyed it. The maps also feel way too cramped, the art style is inconsistent, and the touch controls aren't great, so this is an E tier game. A game that didn't let me down though was Warbits, which is an absolutely amazing turn-based strategy game not too unlike the classic Advanced War game. The goal is to dominate a small map by deploying and moving around units, and the game features both offline and online modes, including user-created levels and asynchronous PvP matches. It is easily the best strategy game of the year, so this is definitely an S tier game. Also, by the way, I've created a post over on my games discovery platform MiniReview with at least 20 more of the best games of 2024, so go check it out, link below. And remember, you can also use MiniReview to find exactly the types of games you like via the filter system, browse the many top games posts, or use the similar games engine to find games like your favorites. Now, in June this year, the open world fantasy MMORPG Tarisland released, and it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. I'm glad there's no auto combat, and the player-driven economy is pretty neat, but the character movement speed is dreadfully slow, and grinding normal monsters for XP gives almost no reward. But ultimately, since this is one of the only AAA MMORPGs of the year so far, I'll place it here in the B tier row. But if you're like me and you actually prefer old school MMORPGs, Eterspire is much more interesting. The game is almost entirely PvE focused with quests, loot and bosses, but they also recently added a party system to the game and player-to-player trading. It is still missing some features you'd expect in most MMORPGs, but I had a really hard time putting it down, and there's no pay to win in the game, so I'll place this securely in the A tier row as one of the best casual MMORPGs. The developers of Soul Knight also released a new game this year called Meow Hunter. It's a 2D action platformer RPG where we jump and dash around small maps while destroying all the enemies and gradually growing stronger. But unfortunately, the controls are just rather finicky and there's no controller support. The world is also pretty busy, and I honestly just expected more out of the game, so I'll land this in the C tier row. But thankfully, we also got Zombotron Re-Boot this year, which is an actual great 2D action platformer with good controls and fun gameplay. The game is incredibly atmospheric, and each level continues directly into the next, making it feel almost like one consistent universe. Oh, and you can pay to remove the ads, so I really like this one. It's A tier for me, and the community on MiniReview also loved it. The arcade kart racer Disney Speedstorm also released this year, and the level design and graphics in this game are just amazing. Gameloft somehow found a way to build the best kart racer gameplay experience on mobile, but then in true Gameloft style, they also decided to add lots of monetization systems to it. So do I give it A for its gameplay or D for its monetization systems? I think I'm gonna land this one in the B tier row as sort of a compromise. But now for the joke of the show, Age of Empires Mobile. This could have been, or actually it should have been, the best RTS game on mobile, but instead what we got was just an extremely pay-to-win base builder like Rise of Kingdoms. The gameplay is boring, combat isn't much better, and there's almost no strategy involved, which is kinda ironic in a strategy game. This is definitely F tier. PewPew Live 2, on the other hand, is just fantastic. It's a fun arcade twin-stick shooter with Asteroids-inspired gameplay split across super challenging single-player levels and co-op multiplayer. It also has community-created levels and even the option to create custom randomized ones. I just love this game, and it's definitely worth its $6 price, so this is S tier in my book. Genshin Impact developer miHoYo also released a fast-paced action game this year called Zenless Zone Zero. The gameplay is a bit of a strange mix of really upbeat combat and then slow visual novel storytelling, but the art just looks fantastic. The animations too, by the way. I mean, just look at this. Ultimately though, it just never truly hooked me, so I'll place it as a B tier game, although for others it might be A or even S tier. Now, one of the most nostalgic games I played this year has got to be Dadish 3D, which is a challenging adventure platformer full of environmental puzzles and silly humor that is clearly inspired by old Nintendo 64 games. The gameplay is just great, so this is easily an A tier game in my opinion, and especially because the ads can be removed via a single in-app purchase. In May this year, we also got a new game in the Earn to Die series, but I think it's safe to say that it wasn't exactly what most had expected, because the gameplay in Earn to Die Rogue is nothing like in the old games, and instead it's a reverse bullet hell roguelike platformer set in the same universe. It's actually not a horrible game, but the monetization isn't fantastic either, so I'll land this in the C tier row. One of the most unique games released this year has got to be Vroomies, which is a fun minimalistic racing game where we tap and swipe at just the right times to help our automatically driving race car finish first, which makes the gameplay feel almost like a rhythm game. The game is also completely free with no ads and no in-app purchases, so it's just a must-try if you like unique races. This is A tier for sure, and it also has great ratings on MiniReview. And let's not forget about Wuthering Waves, or as I like to call it, the We've Got Genshin at Home game. This massive 3D adventure RPG honestly isn't bad, but it's just a lot less polished than Genshin is, and it needs a ton of optimizations. So I think it does show promise, but for now I'll have to land it in the B tier row. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm completely off here. Ubisoft actually also released a game this year. Did you know that? It's called Invincible Guarding the Globe, and it's sort of a strange, almost idle hero-based gacha RPG with characters from the Invincible comic books. If you didn't already know about it, don't really worry though, because the gameplay is just boring, and there's a lot of pay to win and several pay or grind walls. I think this would have done better as just a proper straight-up idle game, but it isn't, so this is E tier. One of the actual best games of the year though is easily Afterimage, which is a beautiful Metroidvania action platformer ported over from PC. It features a massive world, lots of bizarre enemies, loot to collect, and just good old fun gameplay. It's one of the best games in the genre on mobile, so it's well worth its $6 price. This is what an S tier game looks like. If a free-to-play first-person dungeon crawler is more up your alley though, I suggest checking out Wizardry variants Daphne. Daphne? I enjoyed this game a lot more than I thought I would, so while there are definitely super expensive in-app purchases to unlock heroes and gear faster, I think it does deserve an A tier spot. But a fair and firm warning here, do not engage with the monetization systems. It's just not worth it in this game. Just stay free to play, and I think you'll enjoy it. Now, we also got a couple of shooters this year, and the most unique of those is AXREN Heroes, which is a top-down 3 vs 3 shooter with small maps and quick matches. A bit like in Tacticool or Milk Coco. I really wanted to like this game, but it still needs more polish and more content. Lots more content. So I have to land it in D tier for now, but if it continues getting updated, it could easily move to B or maybe even A tier later. I also played a few new bullet heaven roguelikes this year, 2 of which I'll score as B tier. The first of these is Nerd Survivors, which lets you equip a ton of over-the-top weapons just like in Brotato. It's a hardcore indie game and I like its wacky style, so I think it's worth its $3 price. The other game is Ocean Keeper Dome Survival, where we not only use an underwater mech to blast monsters, but also dig for resources in ocean floor cave systems. The gameplay is actually great fun and pretty unique, but the play sessions can easily take over 45 minutes, and I'd love to see some more enemy variation. It's free to try though, so there's no real risk, and then a $3 in-app purchase unlocks the full game, and yeah, I think both games land in the B tier row. Now, one of the biggest games of the year has got to be Pokémon TCG Pocket. I still play this game every single day, at the very least to open a few packs of cards, and sometimes to play a single player or online match as well. I know this is a very debated game, but I think the free-to-play experience is actually great so far, and it's just one big nostalgia trip for me, so I can't really place this one lower than A tier. Supercell also launched Squad Busters, and I really enjoyed its 10-player free-for-all action gameplay, and playing it co-op with my wife was actually one of the highlights of my year, to be honest. But the fun eventually fades as the monetization really starts to kick in, so while the gameplay itself is A tier, I think I'll have to land this game here in the C tier row. The same can't be said for Balatro though. Yes, it's here, we're gonna talk about it. I know this is many people's favorite game of the year, and as someone who loves deck building roguelikes, I can't get enough of this highly addictive poker-themed gameplay either. So for me, this is an easy S-tier game. But something a bit more relaxing that also released this year is the casual and semi-idle farming simulator Island Times, where you harvest crops, mine ores, go fishing, and so on. There's no combat at all, and the game is instead purely focused on incremental progression and then hiring helpers to help automate things. It is a bit bare bones at the moment though, so I'll place it in the B tier row. Now, after a few very dry years, we also got 2 new surprisingly good hero shooters this year. The first is Bloodstrike, which is a hero-based battle royale shooter with fast-paced matches and, importantly, controller support. There's no pay to win and the gameplay is really fun, so this is an A tier game for me. The other game is Star Wars Hunters, which is a 4 vs 4 hero shooter that basically plays like an Overwatch clone set in the Star Wars universe. I really thought this game would be super bad and full of pay to win, but I actually think it's one of the best hero shooters on mobile, and while you can pay to unlock heroes faster, they all feel pretty balanced so far. So I'll place this one in the A tier row as well, for now at least, but of course, the monetization might change in the future. The gacha RPG Solo Leveling Arise, on the other hand, did actually live up to my expectations, in the sense that it's as boring as I expected. And can we just talk about those loading screens? They are everywhere in this game, and it ultimately just ruined it for me. The monetization is also bad though, so yeah, this is D tier. But another one of the most unique games I tried this year is Born Again Online, which is a fun roguelike action MMORPG where you enter co-op dungeons to defeat bosses and monsters alongside 50 other players. The twist though is that there's permadeath, so if you die, you're out. But the gameplay is well balanced and I had a blast playing this one, so it definitely deserves an A tier spot. And talking about MMORPGs, Idle MMO also released earlier this year, which is an incremental idle RPG with social features such as raids and overall progression inspired by games like RuneScape. So it's basically an alternative to games like Korra, Idle Clans, or Melvor Idle, but it's just not as polished as those other games yet, so I will land it in B tier for now. The next game is the indie darling Abalon, which is a turn-based deck builder RPG with roguelike elements. The gameplay is super fun and full of random encounters and events, and it's entirely free as well with just a few in-app purchases for DLC packs. So if you like deck building and RPGs, this is an easy A tier. A new cookie run game also released in 2024 called Tower of Adventures, and this time it's a top-down action RPG with fun but also rather grindy gameplay, including co-op multiplayer. The best way I can summarize this game is that the gameplay is actually good fun, but the gacha rates aren't exactly amazing, and the game quickly gets a bit repetitive and pay-to-win heavy. So I can't really move this past the C tier row. A game that really blew me away though is Astris, which is a sci-fi RPG adventure game with a unique blend of real-time and turn-based combat. And while it looks like a pay-to-win gacha game, there's none of that at all in this $10 premium game, and it even has offline play and cloud save. I think many of you are gonna love this one, and it's S tier for me. Now, a great game that got ported from PC to mobile this year is the atmospheric rally racing game Art of Rally. It's a great game overall, but what truly makes it stand out is that it has everything from hardcore time attack modes to completely laid-back free roam modes where you just explore an open world to collect items. To me, it's an easy A tier game, well worth its $5 price tag. The OG tower defense series Bloons also released a game this year called Bloons Card Storm, which has you build a deck of bloons and monkeys and then deploy them during 1v1 PvE and PvP fights to defeat the opponent. It's basically a mix of a collectible card game and tower defense. It's a decent game, but it didn't really wow me, so I will land it in B tier. One of only 2 Netflix games I've included this year is Katana ZERO, but I honestly felt I just had to include this one because it's easily one of the best action platformers I've played this year. It has instant death combat, awesome slow-mo effects, and a story told through cinematic cutscenes after each level. And it's free if you've got Netflix, of course. So to me, this is an A tier experience. While the real Pal World hasn't released on mobile, we did actually get several copycats this year, one of which is called Amikin Survival. The gameplay in this game, as you might have guessed, has you collect resources, catch monsters, and slowly expand and automate your home base. But our inventory is super limited unless we pay, and monster merging requires premium currency. Surprise! So to me, this was a D tier experience, and I'm still waiting for the real Pal World. Now, I mentioned earlier that Halls of Torment was my favorite bullet heaven roguelike of the year, but my second favorite is Twilight Survivors. I especially love this game for its 3D art style, the over-the-top weapons, and the fact that it's free to play with a $5 in-app purchase to unlock all the heroes. This is definitely A tier. Google Play's game of the year is AFK Journey, and I of course checked it out as well when it released back in March this year. It's basically an extremely polished fantasy game that mixes open world RPG aspects with idle gameplay, and I actually did enjoy it for a bit. The biggest downside though is the monetization, which I think drags it down to B tier, but if you just stay away from the shop, you might be able to have a great time with the game. Hades also finally released on mobile this year via Netflix games. Now, it's unfortunately only out on iOS, but it's easily one of the best roguelike dungeon crawlers ever made, in part thanks to its fantastic art style and the solid gameplay loop. So while not everyone can play it, the game itself is easily S tier, one of the very best. The fantasy roguelike auto battler Valefor is basically the opposite of that, since it's only out on PC and Android for now, but it's a fantastic game if you like RPGs and auto battle gameplay like in Super Auto Pets. The game features both PvE and pseudo PvP, and while it does take a bit to fully understand, I think it's one of the most interesting auto battlers. Unlocking the full version of the game costs $10 US, and I'm gonna place it in the A tier row. And then just a few weeks ago, we got the idle RPG Go Muffin, which is basically an incredibly polished spiritual successor to Ulala Idle Adventure, which I covered all the way back in 2019. The thing that truly makes the game unique though is that everything from the main journey to the dungeons and raids are all played in co-op. There is a lot to this game and everything is very nicely paced, so I liked it much more than I thought I would, and I'm gonna place it, and I can't believe I'm saying this, in the A tier row, despite the gacha mechanics. And then, after 9 years of waiting, the 5 vs 5 MOBA Honor of Kings, which is the best earning mobile game of all time, by the way, also got its release this year. The game plays like something in between casual MOBAs such as Pokémon Unite and the more hardcore ones like Vainglory, rest in peace by the way, but it's super late to the game and it doesn't really introduce anything new, so I think it deserves a B tier spot. Now I've got 20 more game recommendations waiting over in the MiniReview post linked below, so go check that out or view last year's tier list video right here for more great mobile games. And then, till next time, just keep gaming, stay awesome, and I'll see you guys around.